Okay, I think we're ready to get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Day 2 morning keynote session with Dr. Adam Saenz. I am so incredibly excited to introduce him today. We are so excited to hear about stress management as social and emotional learning. I feel like we could all use some stress management after this past year. So this will be a great session. Adam is a licensed psychologist, author, and emotional intelligence expert. He has worked in the education and mental health fields for over 20 years. His research focuses on stress management, the dynamics of effective relationship building, personality assessment, and emotional intelligence. He has delivered state and national keynote addresses, and we are so excited to have him kick off Day 2 for the Keep Indiana Learning Virtually Different Summer Conference. And with that, I'm going to hand it right over to you, Adam.
Thanks so much, Thomas. Good morning, everybody. Great to be with you. Thanks for joining. So before I jump in, I want to know a little bit about you. And I'm coming to you from College Station, Texas, by the way, from our studios here. I want to know a little bit about you. So could you go to the chat? And first of all, I'd love to see what you do. So if you're a classroom teacher, maybe you could put classroom. If you're an administrator, put maybe campus or district level. And let me come over here at the chat and take a look and see if there we go. Teacher, principal, awesome. Thank you, Noel. Good. Let's see. High school math, good deal. District admin, man, we got all over the place. That's awesome, y'all. Thanks so much. School counselor, special place in my heart for school counselors. High school life skills teacher, I love that. Thank you, Amanda. Good deal. Okay, so one more question for you before I jump into my content. I presented in May for a learning series, and some of you may have seen that, and this will help me sort of differentiate my instruction. I've got some content that I may sort of skip over if most of you were here in May, but let's do this now that you've told me what you do. Go back to the chat, and if this is your first time to hear me present, say first time in the chat. And then that way I'll know, like if a lot of you say first, oh yeah, I get some first time, good deal. Okay, first, yep. Got some first timers. Well, welcome first timers. So here's what I'm gonna do. First thing I'm gonna do for the first timers is I'm gonna give you a tour of my studio. So here we go. This is it. So I remember a year ago, like a year and a couple of months ago, people were saying, yeah, the pandemic. So we're gonna start doing conferences by Zoom. And I remember thinking, like, that's never going to fly. Who's going to want to do that? Well, it flew, right? And our whole world went virtual. And so we do so much professional development for school districts and for businesses and universities across the country. I told my team, I said, if we're going to do virtual professional development, we need to do it well. So we built the studio, and this is the studio that I'm coming from. So, and I'll show you one other angle here. This is from looking at it from a different angle. And I'll tell you, out of all of the things that are fun for me about presenting virtually, I'd much rather be with you in person, but it is what it is. But what I figured out early on is that when you present live to a group, even when you tell bad jokes, 20% of the people are going to give you a sympathy laugh, like, bless his heart, that kind of thing. When you present to cameras don't laugh back, even at the good stuff. And so it really threw me off my game when I'd tell a joke and I'd wait for the laughter, and it never came. So insert technology. So this right here, this machine is a soundboard, and it mixes microphones. So when I do my podcast, we run it through this sound machine. We run the microphones, and it's got these cool buttons here, these lit buttons. And those buttons have sound effects on them. So, and I learned to use the sound effects to help my presentation. So let me give you an illustration here. I'm going to tell you 2 bad jokes, and then I'll use the technology to support me. Here's the first bad joke. Let's see. Here we go. What does a nosy pepper do? What does a nosy pepper do? Answer. It gets jalapeno business. See, I got my own laugh track, man. This is like an episode of Seinfeld. I'll tell one more joke. Round of applause. You won't have to hear any more of my bad jokes. Here's the joke. This is a psychology joke. How many narcissists does it take to change a light bulb? Answer, it only takes one. The narcissist holds onto the light bulb and expects the world to revolve around him. I need to, who writes these things anyway, man? Those are pretty bad jokes. All right, so that's the studio, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So thanks again for joining me. Today, this morning, I'm going to be talking about our inner world, your inner world. There is so much going on in our outer world right now. Pandemic, virtual learning, technology, financial stress, political turmoil, racial turmoil. There's so much going on in our outer world. Well, I think it's sort of my bias, you could say, as a psychologist to go within. And so my session this morning and then the next session that I'll do will be all about guiding you into your inner world so that you can recognize the chaos, and I can recognize the chaos in our inner worlds and find strategies to organize the chaos in our inner worlds. Because when we can organize the chaos of our inner world, we're much more resilient as we face these dragons in the outer world. So that's the whole deal for me this morning. And that's what I do, is I help people go in, look in their inner world and organize it. I'm like, there's a store called the Container Store. You know, I think about my wife, she loves Bed Bath & Beyond containers, you know, because you can organize. When you have containers, you can organize. And so think of me as sort of a container store for your soul. That's what these workshops are going to be about. So first I'll talk about stress, and then we'll, for this initial keynote session, and then I'll come back and talk about emotions. So the stress inside of me and the emotions inside of me, how do I organize them, and how do I instead of against me? So that's it in a nutshell. So I'm going to be asking you, as you look into the cave of your soul, to do some pretty intense work. It will be valuable for you in the end, but it will be hard work. So before I ask you to do the hard work and show you what the actual hard work is, I want to give you a reason, a compelling reason to convince you or to hook you into buying into doing the work itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a case study that I think will give us some compelling reason to do this work. So here we go. This kid right here, if you've heard me present before, you know this kid because I talk about him all the time. He's a Latino male. He comes from a low socioeconomic home. He's got a single uninvolved parent. He's skipping school. He's got problems with the law. He's got mental illness, and he's using street drugs to self-medicate. Now, when you look at the demographic variables there, any one of those variables is a strike against a child. When you talk about educational outcomes, being Latino, statistically speaking, means that you're less likely to achieve. Coming from a low socioeconomic home also means you're less likely to achieve. Any one of those, single uninvolved parent, truant, problems with the law. But when you stack all of those together in one student, it's safe to say that this child was not born into privilege. And so that's our challenge in education, is we have students that come from, you could say, impoverished backgrounds, impoverished on multiple fronts, on multiple variables. And our job is to grow them. Our job is to grow them educationally and behaviorally, right? And it's a lot of work. It's absolutely a lot of work. And this, again, this is in a non-pandemic year. This was like 2019, having to work with a student like that, you know. Then you throw in a pandemic, and you add in virtual learning, and you add in technology, and maybe this student did or did not log on. You know, maybe his parent can or can't help him. Maybe he's been, you know, there's a good chance the student hasn't even stood in a lunch line for well over a year, and coming soon to a classroom or campus near you is this guy right here. And so we've got a lot of work ahead of us. We really do. And, you know, if for those of you who you maybe recognize a student like this, or maybe fits a demographic variable that you recognize, I feel the concern that you have, you know, how will I begin to reach a student like this? That's part of what adds to our stress, is knowing the sense of urgency we have about helping children in students in this demographic. Well, this kid is not in 6th grade anymore. Of all things, this little stinker grew up and became a licensed psychologist, and that's what he looks like today. So you know what? Round of applause. I'm going to self-validate with my technology. I'm going to self-validate. So, so that's it. I was that kid, and what I want to do to just to kind of give you a sense of why this is so worthwhile. When I ask you to look into your soul, to peer into your soul, and organize the emotion and the stress that's in there, it's hard work, but it's worth it. And I want to share my story just briefly to give you a reason to believe. There's so much I could share about my story, but let's start in 6th grade. The setting is the early 1980s. The location is the lower Rio Grande Valley of Texas, the very southern tip of Texas, about 20 miles from the border of Mexico. 95% Latino, mostly Spanish speaking. There are 3,145 counties in the United States. This was the 5th poorest per capita. And I remember on the first day of 6th grade showing up to school, and I saw a teacher there that I didn't like. His last name started with T, and we called him Mr. T because he was like Mr. T from the A-Team. You know, I paid a fool, big bad dude, Mr. T. I'd never had Mr. T, but I didn't like him. I just didn't like him because I knew that he didn't care about us. He cared about compliance. That's really what floated his boat. And I was not a compliant kid. And I remember on the first day of school walking up and seeing Mr. T, and he sees me, and we make eye contact, and he approaches me, and he held out his hand and he said, "Stop right there, young man." He said, "Listen, I want you to know something. I know who you are. I know who you are, and your name is Lou Saenz. I know everything about you. I know that you're using drugs. I know that your dad's not in the picture. I know your mom's not invested in you. I know your brother's about to drop out of high school. I know you're skipping school. I know you gave your teachers a run for the money last year, but I want you to understand one thing. I'm not going to put up with it from you, period. I won't put up with it from you." And he said, "In fact, by spring break of this year, I will have you in line. You will be following my directions. I promise you that." And then he said, "Young man, listen to me. If you so much as even speak a word of Spanish in my classroom, me and you and this big brown paddle that I have in my hand right here, we are going to march down to the office and we're going to take care of business because I'm just not going to put up with it." And then he pointed his finger in my face and he said, "Do you understand me, young man?" And I knew right away he meant business because he was Mr. T. So I leaned right back into his face and I said, "Sí entiendo, pendejo." You know what? Boo, that's not appropriate. That's not appropriate. That's not appropriate. For those of you who don't speak Spanish, I will translate it. It means, yes, I understand perfectly. You might want to Google that before you roll that into your conversational Spanish. Fair warning. Well, it was a short honeymoon. We went to the office and took care of business because he said if I spoke Spanish, I would get, I would get consequences, and they were his rules, and I broke them. Well, what happened was that we got locked into a pattern. It seemed like every day, that's all we did was to the office, from the office to, if I had an IEP, goal one would have been Lou will go to the office. I mean, that's all I did. And Mr. T always had these one-liners, couldn't make it through a single day, could you? It must be your job to make my job hell. And it wasn't just at school, it was at home too. My mom was a single parent mom. She was trying to do the right thing, but just not equipped, just out of her league, and every day I got home, I would hear it from my mom, "Ay, mijito, what have you done today? Ay, mijito, pues, ¿quién te manda? Why do you do these things?" Right? It was a beatdown. Well, 3 things happened that year that made my life particularly difficult. The first is a long story, but 2 of my friends went to go buy some drugs. There was a shootout and my friends were murdered. The very next day, there I was back on my campus, to the office, from the office, couldn't make it through a single day, could you, Lou? Second thing that happened that was related to the first thing is that a group of young men broke into my home. They restrained me and they sexually assaulted my cousin. And for a number of reasons, I couldn't talk about it. But the very next day, there I was back on my campus. It must be your job to make my job hell, Lou. Well, the third thing that happened that year is that I was arrested for possession. And I'll never forget the look on my mom's face, the anger in her face when she came to juvenile to get me. And I could tell she was done just by the look on her face. And the first words out of her mouth were, "What are you doing here? What are you doing here?" And I remember thinking, like, what a stupid question to ask me. Are you kidding me? What am I doing here? I know who I am. I'm Lou Saenz. It's my job to make your life hell. I'm never going to learn. I can't make it through a single day. I mean, these are messages that I got growing up my whole life. Like, what am I doing here? This is who I am, Well, Child Protective Services was never involved with my family, but my mom could read the writing on the wall. She knew that I had an older brother that was at risk of dropping out. And so she voluntarily relinquished parental rights. And I went to go live with a family several hundred miles away. And I made it through junior high and high school in this tiny, what was then this tiny rice farming town outside of Houston called Katy, Texas. But when I graduated from high school, the bottom fell out and my depression was out of control. And I was living in San Antonio at the time, working as a dishwasher. I lived in a shack behind a house. It was like a small room with a shower and a toilet. And I was really depressed. And one morning I remember coming home from work, really depressed and overwhelmed, and got home about 3 a.m. I closed the restaurant and I thought, I just need to write. I need to write some thoughts out. And so what I did was, hold on one sec. I pulled out this journal right here to write out some thoughts. And I found in the journal box, these letters here that I want to show you. Look at the date. Let that focus in for a minute. Look at the date on that. It says May 23rd, 1985. And you'll see that it was signed. It says Joe Ella Exley. So this was one letter. And this is the second one. You'll see that it's addressed to Lou. And then it's signed here on the bottom by Mrs. McRoberts. I was blown away at what I found. They were letters, these two letters that these two teachers had written to me. My senior year at high school, it was literally the last day of my senior year. As I was walking out of each of their class, they said, "Here, read this." I was 18. I was like, whatever. I didn't even think about it. I just want to get out of here. So I put it in my backpack. Well, here a year later, I'm finally reading these letters. And those words, let me just share part of what those letters said. One of them said, "You're extremely talented and intelligent, but most importantly, you have a good heart. I know you will use your talents to help your fellow man. And that's the most satisfying life a person can have." And it was signed by Joella Exley. It said some other things, but that's what jumped out. This is part of what the second letter said. "Don't quit writing, especially in your journal. Someday it may be the basis for your book. You have insight, sensitivity, intelligence beyond your tender years. Keep being you. You're a special person." And it was signed. It said some other things, but that's what jumped out. It was signed by Polly McRoberts. And those words just destroyed me. They just destroyed me, because I remember thinking, like, I know who I am. I'm a 19-year-old version of that 6th grade kid that's never going to make it through a single day, whose job it is to make your life hell, who's never going to learn. I know who I am. I'm using drugs. I'm working as a dishwasher. I've got no family. I've got no money. I've got no hope. I've got no future. And I wasn't suicidal at that point, but I remember thinking, like, are you kidding me? I'm 19 years old and I've got another 60 years of this life to put up with. What's the point? But here were these two women for whom I had tremendous respect that were disagreeing with me. And because of who they were and the way they lived their life in front of us, not just as teachers or as educators, but as human beings, I couldn't just blow them off, because I knew they wouldn't have written these words if they weren't absolutely true, if they didn't absolutely believe it. So back and forth I went. I think I know who I am, but here are these two teachers that are disagreeing with me. I can't blow them off. So finally I said, here's the deal. I am going to try, I'm going to set up a test that I know I'll fail. And when I fail this test, that's all the proof I need to go back to my miserable life, just in my own heart, to prove that I'm who I think I am and these women are wrong. Here's the test. I'm going to try to get into college. I have no idea how you do that. I don't have money. I'm not college material. Brown kids where I grew up didn't go to college, and so got on a bus, took a bus to UTSA, the University of Texas at San Antonio. As soon as I stepped off, my very first experience on a college campus was a panic attack. You're not college material. You don't belong here. You're out of your league. Well, I ended up applying to college that day and couldn't believe it. After several months, I got a letter and it said, "Congratulations, you've been accepted." And I thought, surely this is an error, but it wasn't. And so the first class I had to take that fall was like an introduction to English. And I thought, man, that's awesome, because if I have any hope of getting a degree or passing a college course, English, it's got to be my favorite subject. You know, that's my best shot. And so I took that course that fall, and not only did I pass, I made an A. And for the first time in my life, I gave myself permission, not so much to believe Miss McRoberts and Miss Exley, but just to consider maybe they could see something in you that you couldn't see in yourself. You know, it's possible that they were right. So I said, nah, I better take another class just to be sure. So I took another one that spring and I passed it, and then kept going back a little bit at a time every semester, thinking like, no, seriously, this is where I fail out. You know, this is the end of the road for me. Well, just before I turned 26 years old, I graduated with my undergraduate degree in English. Never thought I was going to get a college degree. Never thought I was college material. But there I was. And finally, for the first time in my life, I gave myself permission to be somebody else. I gave myself permission to believe Miss McRoberts and Miss Exley. And I said, man, I'm done being Lou. I'm done being that kid whose job it is to make your life hell, who's never going to learn, who can't make it through a single day. And then just psychologically, as a way to give myself permission to be somebody else, I said, I'm going to be Adam now. I'm going to start going by my first name. So if you look here, you'll see on that book, let that focus in. It says Adam L. Saenz. So my middle name is Lewis, and I had always been Lou. But I said, I'm going to be Adam now. Maybe Adam can live into this new life. And so, yeah, I had my undergraduate degree. I wanted to keep going. I got excited about school. I got my master's in counseling, got my PhD in psychology. And man, I'll tell you, I'm here to tell you that I'm grateful for the opportunities my education has afforded me, but education didn't change my life. Educators did. It was men and women just like you that 40 years ago could have looked at me and said, man, they don't pay me enough to put up with a kid like that. And they would have been exactly right. They didn't get paid enough to put up with a kid like me. But by God's grace, man, those women said, if not me, then who? And if not now, then when? And it changed my life. It changed my life. And so that's the reason I think that this work is so worth doing, this looking within, because in August, kids are going to be coming back, you know, and they're going to be distraught. They're going to be anxious. Some of them are going to be excited. A lot of them will be, but some of them are going to be angry. Some of them are going to be afraid. Some of them will be depressed. Some of them will be just absolutely terrified, you know, and that's the children. We as adults will have those same feelings as we come back. And so knowing that we as the adults are the, to use some attachment language, we're the secure base in those kids' lives. We're the ones that they're looking to answer the question, is life safe? Can I succeed in this world? Is this life worth living? They're looking at us as adults. It's called social referencing. So knowing that's what we're doing. We're not just instructing in reading, writing, and arithmetic. We're life instructors essentially as adults. And so knowing that we play that valuable role, as evidenced by the life that I'm living now because of women 40 years ago who changed my life. That's why I think this work is so worth doing, is because we're shaping lives. We're shaping lives. And not only do those teachers shape my life, they shape my daughter's life. As crazy as that sounds, there's this generational impact of what we do. I don't have time to go into that, but maybe later tonight or whatever, I would encourage you, go to YouTube and just Google my name, Adam Saenz, and TED Talk, and you'll hear me tell the story of my teachers, but more importantly, how they impacted my daughter's life as well. So that's it. That's why this work is so worth doing, is because we're shaping lives. We really, really are. And I would argue in a year like this, where we have felt powerless, we've felt frustrated, we've felt hopeless, we've felt ineffective, we've felt incompetent, all of those uncomfortable feelings, I would argue that our presence is more important now to these kids than it's ever been. Okay. So that's it. So now let's shift and talk about stress management and SEL. That's why it's so worth doing. Now, what do we do? Well, this is what SEL looks like in a classroom. And this is from the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, CASEL, C-A-S-E-L. It starts with self-awareness. When I'm aware of myself, then I can manage myself, but I can't manage what I'm not aware of. And so that's me, guiding you into your inner world so that you can manage it. Once I'm aware of myself and I'm managing myself, I'm a secure base, I'm centered. That gives me more empathy or social awareness for people around me. And then with relationship skills, I can connect to those people, my colleagues, parents, students, and then we make good decisions. We live our best life. Here's another way to think of it. It starts with self-awareness, my inner world, what's going on inside of me. Then I can regulate what's going on inside of me. And when I add to that empathy and social skills, then I find peak performance. Then I live my best life. So again, this is why I think this work is so impressive and so important. So as I guide you through these steps on stress management, be thinking about the stresses in your life. So what happened was my clinical team, I have an outpatient clinic in College Station, Texas. We have about 30 mental health providers in our clinic. But we figured out 5 years ago that our office was not the front line of mental health intervention. The classroom is. Kids that need therapy the most don't have access to it. They just can't get to it. And we knew that, and it just broke our hearts. So we started thinking systemically, how can we empower educators? Since schools are now, in my opinion, the front line of mental health intervention, what can we do to help empower educators? The goal isn't to make them into mental health professionals. The goal is to give them a basic mental health first aid toolkit, you know? So we wrote this SEL curricula, a social and emotional learning curricula, called the Equipped Classroom. And what we found is that the most effective SEL interventions begin with adult SEL. And then as adults apply SEL strategies in their own lives, they become living interventions for every student. And so I tell teachers all the time, like, I can't teach trigonometry unless I know trigonometry. I can't teach language arts unless I know language arts. And I can't guide a student through SEL unless I'm practicing and living it myself, because I really am the living intervention. It's not the parental curricula. So that's one thing, is that effective SEL starts with adult SEL. It starts with an adult going inside of themselves to figure out what's going on in their inner world and to organize it. And I say this a lot, you know, I think that the best tier 1 intervention for every student is a healthy adult living a life of emotional intelligence, practicing internal awareness and internal regulation. Every student benefits when we do this. So, you know, and this comes not just from research, but from my own clinical experience. You know, I found that when I would do families or work with kids in therapy, it didn't do much good to spend an hour with them when they were going into chaotic families. And so I started working with parents, because when I intervene at a parent level, all the children in the home benefited from it. So I started with parents, and then I would get to the kid work. But step 1 is the adult, right? And so that's my same approach with schools. It's starting with adults and making sure that the adults feel seen, feel heard, feel validated, feel, you know, attended to, so that their cup is full, and then they have something to give students. So there you go. So again, it's got to start with adults. Self-awareness, self-regulation, you add to that empathy and social skills, then you get good decision-making. So if it starts with adults, the question is, well, what do I need to be aware of, and what do I need to regulate? Well, there are 3 things. Number 1 is your personality, and that's pretty stable, like climate. Number 2 is the emotion, and that changes like the weather. And number 3 are like the storms, and that's stress. So this morning, I'm going to be talking about stress, and then later this morning, I'll talk about the emotions, the weather. Stress management, here we go. So now, you know, the reason I go through this is just to kind of give you a conceptual idea of how stress management feeds into emotional intelligence, how stress management is an expression of adult SEL. And the exercise
I think we lost Adam for a minute.
that I'm going to guide you through now. When
I
think about going back to the next school year, I worry what? In the chat, okay, looks like I'm back. You lost me for a minute. Sorry about that. I'd love you to go to the chat and answer this question. When I think about going back to school next year, I worry that what worries you when you think, and I'll play the Jeopardy music again, because we are behaviorally conditioned to think when we hear that song. Go to the chat and tell me what worries you about going back next year. Yes. Won't have time to focus on everything. Yep, absolutely. Class will be out of control. Yep. Having students that are dysregulated. Yep, absolutely. Those are all very legitimate. Expectations will be, gosh, no kidding, man. That's the truth. Yes. Meeting the needs. Yes, Brandy, absolutely. Yes, those are all legitimate. So as you think about what worries you about going back to school, here's the template I'm going to give you to help you understand your inner world and regulate that. So all of these stressors that you've listed are legitimate. They're external stressors, meaning external to you. So as you see those things, that chaos in the world around you, it's going to create chaos within you. So I'm going to give you a template to help you understand how to go within yourself and order yourself and regulate yourself. So let's talk about stress. Let's see, I'm going to skip this. There. Stress is energy you produce when you wonder whether you can deal effectively with a threatening situation. That's all stress is. It's energy, really. You know you're stressed because your heart rate is elevated, your muscles are tense, you're worried. And you're going to use that energy to attack the source of your stress or to run from it. And either option can be helpful or hurtful. So basically, when I say that I'm stressed, what I'm saying is I'm afraid. Stress essentially, for practical purposes, is the same thing as fear. It's the same thing as anxiety. So when I'm stressed, I'm afraid. And when I'm afraid, I'm in fight or flight. So my sympathetic nervous system kicks in. I go into fight or flight. My body starts dumping this energy called adrenaline and cortisol that I supplement with caffeine. Because it's sort of Mother Nature's way of saying, oh, that thing that's scaring you, here's a bunch of energy. You're going to need this energy to fight that thing that's scaring you or to run from it, fight or flight. So what I'm going to do now is talk through the fight or flight strategies. And I want you to think about how you can access these strategies to make your life better internally. So this is another way to think of it. Instead of fight or flight, I put engage and disengage. And we can engage in ways that are helpful, and we can disengage in ways that are helpful. This is called being a life giver. And we can engage in ways that are hurtful, and we can disengage in ways that are hurtful. This is called being a life sucker. And we decide whether we're going to be life givers or life suckers. We're in control of that. We choose to be life givers or we choose to be life suckers. And if you think having a PhD in psychology somehow makes you immune to being a life sucker, you're wrong, because when the right stars align on any given day, I can be a life sucker. I can act a fool with the best of them, right? So the goal is to remember, how do I more and more become a life giver each day and less of a life sucker? So let's talk about what life-giving strategies look like. Engaging. I'm stressed out. I'm overwhelmed. My body is producing all this adrenaline, all this cortisol. So number one, I want to get connected. And I'll talk more about that, being connected. So one of the worst things we can do in our professional lives or our personal lives is live in isolation. Even for guys like me that are pretty intensely introverted, I need to be connected. And being connected is one of the most adaptive stress management strategies we can implement. And we're going to come back to that one. Next one, anticipate. And that's just think ahead. Think ahead. What problems will I face? So you can really, hang on one second. I'm going to take my jacket. I'm getting kind of warm here. Sorry. Trying not to have a wardrobe malfunction. Sorry. There, much better. I can breathe. All right. Thank you. I've got it. The thermostat set to 68. I'm sweating. My bad. Okay. Here we go. Back to the strategies. Anticipate, think ahead, and you can engineer the heck out of that. So it's like, what do I need to do for the first 2 minutes when I open my eyes to make sure that I have a successful morning here at the house? Then what kind of morning do I need to have at the house to make sure that I launch myself into my day effectively? What kind of morning do I need to have at work to make sure that I have an effective afternoon? What kind of Monday do I need to have to set up my week for success? What kind of first week of the month do I need to have to set up my month for the success? So you're just thinking ahead, which challenges will I face relationally? Which challenge will I face in terms of my time? And you're planning ahead as much as possible. Part of what was so stressful about this past year was that it was so hard to anticipate. Things changed so much. But one thing I learned to anticipate over the last 12 months is the unexpected. And just knowing that on any given day, I could wake up and my plans would be out the window, just knowing that and accepting that really dropped my stress level, especially for a guy like me that's prone to be a control freak. So to whatever degree you can think ahead and anticipate and be prepared, have a plan in place for that, that's great. Next one, redirect the energy. So your body is dumping adrenaline, cortisol, caffeine, all of this energy bouncing around inside of you. At the end of the day, flush it out. Go for a walk, do yoga, do Pilates, P90, CrossFit, whatever your jam is, just find some way to flush that energy out of your system, because when you carry that energy into bed with you, you lay down and then your mind is racing. All that energy is just, you're perseverating. And did I send that email? Do I need to call that parent? What about tomorrow? What about my lesson? And on and on and on. So when I work out every day, I look at the sweat and I think that's stress leaving my body. That's energy leaving my body. And so I love working up a good sweat because it situates me and prepares me so that when I lay down at night, I'm going to initiate the circadian rhythm. I'm actually going to be able to fall asleep. So having a way to flush that energy is real important. Next one, assert yourself appropriately. And what that means is set boundaries. This whole year for me has been an extended lesson in setting boundaries. The pandemic, not just like work-life, home-life boundaries. Man, I've set boundaries around who am I going to interact with? I set boundaries around how am I going to spend my money? I set boundaries around what food will I eat? When will I eat it? I set boundaries around how will I work out? I mean, I've just had to redefine what boundaries look like because there was so much stress on me. I knew that if I didn't set good boundaries, that eventually I was going to get depleted very quickly. So I had to redefine my boundaries. So what I would encourage you to do is whoever you go home to at the end of the day, spouse, kids, whomever, the dog, well, this wouldn't work if it's just a dog, but whatever human being you go home to, talk to them this summer and ask them, like, what do boundaries need to look like? When do you think I need to shut this down? There are times when I come home from work and it's 8 o'clock and maybe I'm pouring a little tequila, maybe not, but maybe I am. And I say to my wife, I'm unemployed until 7:30 tomorrow morning. And man, they could blow up my email, my cell phone. I'm not going to touch any of it. And I'm going to take this wild leap of faith and see if the sun comes up tomorrow. And you know what, man, so far, I have not yet broken the universe. The sun came up. The sun came up today. Can you believe that? So that's awesome. Back to the slide here, back to the PowerPoint. Set boundaries, just decide what boundaries need to look like. So this is me fighting the outer world in ways that are helpful and my inner world. So these are fight strategies, engage strategies that make me stronger and make the dragon weaker. I can also disengage in ways that are helpful. The flight strategies. Number one, practice self-observation. And that's exactly what we're doing this morning. We're looking within, not looking without, but looking within and asking these things that scare me. Why do they scare me? Why am I so concerned about students and about parents and about this school year? And at some level, at a superficial level, there's honor in that. It's because I care about these kids and I want them to be successful and they're depending on me and I want to do a good job. That's great. Keep reflecting though, and start asking yourself beyond that, is it possible that I'm anxious because I don't want to be perceived as inadequate? I don't want to be perceived as incompetent. I have to be the smartest person in the room. I have to be the best teacher on campus. I have to make all the right decisions. I have to have all the right answers. I have to have every student love me. Well, if that's my MO, that's about my own shadow, my own weakness, my own insecurity. I need to deal with that. If I'm afraid that I won't be perceived as perfect or adequate or good enough, that's on me. That has nothing to do with a global pandemic or anything like that. It's stuff that I need to work on. But if I'm not practicing reflecting inward, then I'll never stop and ask, how is this about my own fear, my own blind spot, my own insecurity? Next one, keep perspective. And what that means is in the grand scheme of things, how big a deal is this? You know, in the grand scheme of things, going back to school in the fall is a big deal, you know, and it's worth having concern about. You know, but I think about the little things that stress me out sometimes, like somebody cuts me off in traffic, you know, or the guy in front of me didn't run the yellow light so I can run the red light, and now I'm stuck at another light, and I get all kind of bent about that. Like, in the grand scheme of things, Adam, you know, not that big a deal, right? So that's what keeping perspective is all about. So these strategies right here, this is me being a life giver. I'm stressed out, I'm overwhelmed, I've got all this energy. When I do these things, when I connect that energy to these behaviors, then I become stronger. Same energy, though, can make me a life sucker. Here we go. These engage strategies: attack, blame, criticize others, attack, cause dissension among staff. You know, all that stuff is, so let's get back to the PowerPoint. This is organic fruits and vegetables, lean protein. I mean, it does the body good. This is the 99-cent menu at McDonald's. And man, I'll tell you what, I love me some chicken nuggets and fries. And there's a time and a place, you know, but God, if that's what I live on, my body at my age, like, no, there's no way. There's no way. And so the thing with this is it feels good sometimes to attack and blame and criticize and cause dissension. I mean, it just feels so good to rip into somebody. That stupid idiot, you know, it feels good, honestly, for a lot of people, a lot of times. But if that's my ground zero, if that's just the behavior that I go to and that's my normal, it's not good. It's not healthy. It's not effective or adaptive. So I really want to be mindful of that, you know, not being a life sucker, attacking, blaming, criticizing. Another thing I can do is I just disengage in ways that are hurtful, you know, over here. Rationalize, deny, can't accept my responsibility for doing wrong. I cut off my feelings. I'm apathetic. And I'm just sort of like, whatever, you know, all I know is I've got 31 years, 3 months, and 2 days before I'm eligible for retirement. I'm going to tread water, you know, as long as I don't commit some kind of egregious felony, they're never going to fire me, and I'm just going to be passive aggressive. And I'm not doing anything so bad that they're going to fire me, but I'm certainly not doing anything good that's going to benefit anyone. And so you just sort of hide back, and you can't own what you need to own, and there's no sense of vitality in your mission. That's just not helpful. You know, it may help me sleep at night when I'm apathetic and say, whatever, I don't care about this place, but it doesn't do the organization good. You know, these things both feel good. It feels good to lay into somebody sometimes, and it feels good to, you know, sometimes cause dissension. It feels good sometimes to be apathetic and say, whatever, screw it, I don't care. You know, some of that feels good. But when we do that day in, day out, and that becomes our normal way to deal with stress in our inner world, we become more and more toxic. You know, we become part of the problem and not part of the solution. So some things to think about. So again, we know that we're stressed out in our inner world. We know that we're scared of these things that we listed. This is me being a life giver, being helpful. And this is me being a life sucker, being hurtful. And we are in control of that. So the last thing I'm going to do is go back to the helpful stress management strategies. Out of all of these stress management strategies, if I had to pick just one where I would get most bang for the buck, I would pick being connected, because there's just so much research that shows people who are relationally connected in healthy ways have far better outcomes in terms of their physical well-being and their psychological well-being. So being relationally connected, it's good for us, right? So let me in these last 5 minutes, and then I'll go to Q&A, talk about who we need to be connected to. So then you say, well, okay, I get it, Adam, I need to be connected, but to whom? Who should I be connected to? You know, does that mean I need to be married? Well, what if I'm divorced? What if I'm single? Does that mean I need to be connected to my parents? Well, what if they're deceased? Or what if I don't like being around them? Well, let me show you who we need to be connected to. This is called a map of archetypes. A map of archetypes. And so I'll come back to that slide in a minute, but let me explain what it is. In our stories, my undergraduate degree is in English, and so I kind of go back to the English major nerd in me a lot, in case the glasses didn't give it away. There are what are called character archetypes. So every story that we tell, you know, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, you know, the Iliad, old stories, new stories, you know, ancient stories, secular stories, religious stories. The characters, the names change, but the archetype is the same. right? Meaning that the role that character plays is essentially the same. And again, this is the map of archetypes, and they roughly correspond to personality styles, you could argue. This is where I go when I think about being connected. This is where I need to go. So let's talk about the first person you need on your dream team to help you get through stress. Your sage. That is your the person that can offer you guidance and wisdom. So let me show you here. These Lego guys here are this is my dream team. Let me put this up here. Let that focus in. There you go. So you'll see I have, let me get it. There we go. Yoda. That's Rey Skywalker, Qui-Gon, and Chewie. That's your dream team. That's your dream team. And this is my dream team. So let's talk about how these guys and girls are archetypes and how you need to have them in your life. So back to the PowerPoint. The sage is your Yoda. That's the person that can guide you. And in my life, I've had guides that have helped me learn to be a husband, a father, a business owner, a graduate student. I mean, in all domains of my life, I've had people that have coached me. I've had Yodas along the way. So that's the first person you need. Second person you need is a hero. The hero is not the person that saves your day. The hero is the person that reminds you of the greatness inside of you and calls you up to your greatness so that you can save your own day. And that's your Rey Skywalker or your Luke Skywalker. The person that says, hey, there's good stuff in you. I don't want to hear your excuses. You're whining, you're belly aching. Get up, get off your rear end, get out into the game and do great things because there's greatness inside of you. That's the hero. The next one that we need is the caregiver. That's sort of the opposite of the hero. The hero says, I don't want to hear your excuses. Get off your rear end, get on your feet and do great things. The caregiver says, oh, no, get off your feet, get on your rear end. Let me love you. Let me nurture you. Let me fill you up. Let me hear all about it. Tell me all the excuses. Tell me all the reasons that your life is hard. That's what a caregiver does. So let me just fill you up because the hero is demanding that you burn energy. My job is to make sure that you have energy to burn. And that's your Qui-Gon. You know, Qui-Gon saw this young kid called Anakin and said, hey, let me take that kid under my wing. Maybe little did he know. And then everyman, that's your Chewbacca. Your everyman is just sort of your co-pilot. That's the person like your best friend that's been with you, you know, year after year. They're not there to tell you to go fast or slow or, you know, turn left, turn right. They're just there along the ride for you. The person that you can feel yourself, warts and all. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room with them. They know you and they accept you right where you're at. That's your co-pilot. That's your Chewbacca. It's like your sidekick. These are the four people that we need to stay centered when we're stressed out. When our inner world starts to feel overwhelming and we're trying to engage those fight or flight strategies, these are the people that will keep us doing well. Okay, so here's what I want you to reflect on. Who's your everyman with whom you will always feel connected and comfortable? Who's your sage who will offer you guidance? Who is your hero? And who is your caregiver who will always nurture you? One person can serve more than one role. Like my wife is my caregiver and my everyman. So think about that. So a couple more things I'll say about that, and then I'm gonna open it up for Q&A. Number one, we want to have all of those things in our lives. We want people to be those things. We want that role to be played for us, number one. But it's really got to start, as crazy as this sounds, it's got to start with me being these things to myself. I have to be my own everyman, meaning I have to be comfortable with myself. I have to accept myself just as I am. I have to be my own sage, meaning I have to trust my own wisdom. I have to be my own hero, meaning I have to demand greatness from myself. And the last one is I need to be my own caregiver, meaning I need to love myself well and be kind to myself. It took me years to figure that out, you know, and given the childhood that I had and all the chaos in my childhood, for years I was angry and resentful about my past. But it wasn't until I finally got to, and this was like in the last 10 years, where I realized, oh, the goal is for me to be those, I never had a hero. I never had a caregiver. I never had an everyman. I never had any of those things in my life. But the goal is for me to be that to myself. And once I figured that out, it was just so liberating for me, because I realized I could take control of my life. I could author my future when I'm those things to myself. So that's the first thing, is ask yourself, to what degree are you doing this for yourself? then that's the first thing, is to what degree am I doing that for myself? And the second thing is, how good are you being that to other people? So I've got 4 kids now. My youngest just graduated high school, so they're off, you know, it's empty nest. But what you figure out real quick is that if you're going to be a good parent, you have to be all of those 4, at least those 4, and really just about all of everything on that map, really. You have to be all of those things to your kids. Somebody once said that the thing about parenting is that the first 28 years are the hardest. I'm inclined to agree. Anyway, so the question is, in your classroom, on your campus, in your home, how effective are you at being those 4 things? Are you good at being an everyman and coming alongside people? Are you good at being a sage and offer them wisdom? Are you good at being a hero and demanding greatness? And then are you good at being a caregiver and loving and nurturing? Most of us tend to naturally be good at one thing, but not the others. And so it's great to be good at one thing, but we want to develop our fluency in all of those. And so I'll share one more thing with you, and then I'll open it up for Q&A. In therapy, typically the way a session rolls out, there's sort of this protocol, like a client will come into the office. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. They have a seat. So what's been going on? And the first 5 minutes of the session are usually like just a dump. This is going on, that's going on. My mom this, my ex that, you know, the boss this, whatever. And so then they dump, and then they stop, and they were like, okay, so what are you going to say, Adam? And my first question is, thanks for sharing. How can I help you today? How can I help you today? And I listen to their answer, and the way they respond to me tells me what they need. It tells me whether they need an everyman, like, oh, you just need somebody to be with you today. Great, we can do that for an hour. You need a sage, you need wisdom. Okay, I can offer you wisdom. You need a hero. You need somebody that's going to say, you know what, get over it and just go do what you need to do. Or you need a caregiver. You need somebody to say, oh my gosh, man, I'm so sorry to hear that. Tell me more about that. So that question, how can I help you today? When you learn to listen to the answer to that, it sort of frames for you what that person needs, whether they need a hero or caregiver, everyman, or a, what was the third one? Sage. Okay, so that's it. Again, big picture. I told you that my task with you in this session and in my next session is to help you learn to go within. There's all this stuff going on outside of us that's scaring us, as it should. I mean, these are certainly anxiety-producing phenomenon. I love this quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson. He said, "The wise man in the storm prays not that God would calm the sea, but that God would deliver him from his fear." And I really love that, because it speaks to this idea, like the storm within me is the first thing that I need to calm. And so I've talked through stress management in giving you some practical strategies that will help you go within, organize your stress, and find adaptive ways to deal with your stress. When I come back, we'll talk about how do you do that with emotion. And again, this session that I gave you is, it's just one module from the day-long session that we do with educators in our SEL curricula. My publisher would string me by my toes if I didn't put this up. This is a QR code. There's some free samples to our curricula if you want to go to the website and check it out. So there you go. All right. So again, my life is living proof that what you do matters. Be encouraged. Just know that you are absolutely shaping the future. You are changing lives. As cliche or hyperbolic as that language may sound, it's absolutely true. My life is living proof. Be encouraged. And when you do the hard work of going within to regulate to accept your inner world and then to regulate it, you are positioning yourself to be in a place of power for the people that are depending on you. So what I want to do now, QR code again, I saw that, is I want to open it up for Q&A. So I want to know what questions you have for me about, and there, that always inspires thought. Any questions for me? And you can put those in the chat. Oh, I see some questions on here we go. So I'm going to back off that. How do we get admin to prioritize stress management for staff? Great question. How do you get admin to prioritize? You don't get them. Admin either gets it or they don't. I know that's not the answer you wanted to hear, but I would do this. I would go to the administrator and say, thanks for all the work you're doing. What's really, can I just share with you what's really kind of like burdening my heart, or I don't know what kind of language you want, just something I'm really, really feeling strongly about. And that is this: we're all stressed out. And I know you're stressed as a leader, but have you thought about what resources might be available for us as adults to help us learn to cope with stress? Because I think if we can regulate our stress as adults, that'll go so far to help kids regulate their stress. But we've got to have tools ourselves as adults. We've got to have permission to feel. We've got to have permission to be stressed out. We can't ignore it. We can't minimize it. We can act like we're not stressed out, but that's just not true. So I'm just wondering, do you have any ideas? And they'll probably say, nope, get back to work here. And then you do this. You say, boo, you suck, administrator. Don't tell them they suck. I'm just joking. Then say, well, it doesn't seem like you're too, it's not a sense of importance for you as a leader, but it is for me. Would it be helpful if I brought you some resources, things to consider? Could I do the homework on that? And then you could say, there was this one guy named Adam that I saw on the Keep Indiana Learning Summer Conference. And he talks a lot about stress management, and he's a firm believer that it starts with the adults. So maybe I could give you his contact information. So that's how I would do it, is start by approaching admin and then helping them, letting them know how you feel. And then ask around, ask anybody else if they feel stressed out as well, any other teachers, and then get a committee together and then go with a plan. How do we get students to understand how to choose activities that are most meaningful and try not to do everything? You start having a conversation about that. You start asking them. I would start by asking students, how do you know what's the best and what's not the best? How do you know which activities are good and which activities are not good? How do you know when to set boundaries? You have to start all of that. And that's such a big question. I can't pretend to answer it, but that's part of SEL, social emotional learning, is understanding, what's good for me and what's not good for me, what's helpful for me and what's not helpful for me. So I think the best way to get them to understand it is that you implement a systematic SEL program that helps kids understand how to prioritize tasks. Great question. How can we keep everyone on staff and in the corporation from being life suckers? You can't. You don't keep anybody from being anything. I'm a licensed psychologist. I've got 20 years of clinical experience, and on a bad day, I can't keep myself from being a life sucker. So this idea that we're gonna wave a magic wand and everybody's gonna wake up one day and like, we're not life suckers. We're life givers. It doesn't work that way. So what we do then, which I know that feels like a really hopeless statement to make, but it's the truth. So then what you do is you say, man, I can't control the corporation. I can't control my campus. On a good day, I can control me. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to control me. And I'm going to be a life giver. I'm going to be a life giver, and I'm going to be deliberate about being a life giver. And I'm going to start using that language with other people and say, when they do nice things to me, like, thanks for being a life giver, man. Thanks for that text you sent me. Thanks for the note you wrote me. Thanks for making copies for me. Thanks for that smile. That's so life-giving. Thank you so much, so much. And then what's going to happen is you commit to being a life giver. Two things: people will start to, the sea will part, the great sea will part, the Red Sea, and there will be this group of people and this group of people. This group of people will say, hey man, you're a life giver. Like, thanks, I appreciate that. I want to be more like you. And then the haters over here will say, you're an idiot. You're trying to be all nice and everything. Like, no, we're miserable and we're committed to our misery. Great, man. You go on and live your miserable life. It's not my job to fix you or change you or heal you. I'm just going to live my life. And if other people want to be life givers with me, then let's do it. So that's it. I think you start with yourself and live your life as unto you. Great question. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to get back to the PowerPoint. Hang on one sec. I am going to do a call-in. We're going to do a call-in. Somebody is going to, hold on one sec. Somebody is going to score in these last minutes we have together. Somebody is going to score. Check this out. A free copy of my book, The Power of a Teacher, a free copy of my book, The EQ Intervention that I've been talking about today, and a $25 Starbucks gift card. Check that out. Combined retail value, $25. So here's what I'm going to do. There's the drum roll, right? This is just like in the 70s, like the first caller, you're going to win gifts and 4 tickets to the Led Zeppelin concert. Okay, I'm going to show you a number. I want somebody to call me and tell me what your takeaway is. Here we go. Follow me on Twitter. There's that. There's the number to call. Somebody call me and tell me what your takeaway point is. Let's see who the first caller is. Somebody's going to score big. Let's see if we can get a caller. Oh, we got a call coming in. Hello, this is Adam. Who is this?
Hi, this is Rachel.
Rachel! Round of applause for you, Rachel. How are you doing today?
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
Are you? Awesome. How's your summer going?
My summer is kind of in a mix of totally lazy and very organized.
Okay, that's nice. That's nice. Well, congratulations, first caller. What's your takeaway for today? When you hear me talk about stress management and the dream team and all that, is there like a key point that jumps out for you?
I really connected with the dream team idea, and I loved the Star Wars representations there as well. And I was, of course, thinking about people in my life who fit those different categories.
Yeah.
But also, I think what really hit my heart was to what degree am I that person to myself in different situations?
Good for you. Yeah. Well, what's easiest for you to be to yourself of those four?
Probably the everyman.
Yeah. You're good. You're comfortable with yourself.
Yes, and just you're doing good. Keep it up. Keep moving.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What's hardest for you?
Hardest for me is probably hero.
Yeah.
But my significant other is very good at being my cheerleader. So
good. I thought you were going to say cracking a whip. Your significant other is good at cracking a whip. Well,
he's a really good cheerleader.
That's cool. That's great. Well, here's what I want you to do. You'll see my email address there at the bottom right-hand corner of that slide, adam@adamsaenz.com. Email me and say, hey, Adam, it was great chatting with you today. I'm organized and lazy, and I want you to send me the books and the gift card to this mailing address. And so I will get that email from you. And as soon as we get your mailing address, we'll put it in the mail to you.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Well, listen, it was great chatting with you. I hope you have a great summer.
Thank you so much. It was a blessing hearing from you today.
Oh, great. Take care.
You too.
Bye. All right, my friends, that's it. That's all I got. We're about at the end of our time. So thanks. Oh, hold on. I'm having technical difficulties here. Please stand by. There we go. Sorry about that. I'm wrestling the microphone. All right. Thanks. Oh, dang it. Hold on. There. Okay. Thanks so much for your time. Really enjoyed it. And I hope to see you for my next workshop on managing emotions. Okay. And I will leave it on this slide right there for you. Thanks so much, y'all.
Thank you so much, Adam. I would invite everyone to join us for the 10 a.m. sessions to talk a little bit more about everything that Adam went over in his keynote section here. There are 3 sessions for you to join, so go to your agenda and chat with the community a little bit more. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing everyone at the 11 a.m. concurrent sessions, where Adam will be hosting another workshop session to go a little bit more in depth. Thank you for joining us and have a great day.